The first thing you need to know about my wife, Kimberly, is that she's never been on time for anything in her life. If she says she'll be home at 6, you'll be lucky if she walks through the door before 9. She's not doing it to be rude. It's just part of who she is. The woman exists in some alternate reality where the rules of time don't apply. It used to drive me crazy, but after 10 years of marriage, I learned to treat it like the weather, unpredictable, inconvenient, and completely out of my control. So when she told me she'd be late getting home from her book club on Wednesday night, I didn't think twice about it. "Don't wait up," she had said, grabbing her purse on the way out. "We might get drinks after." That should have been my first clue that something was off. I know what you're thinking. Why would a grown man care that his wife is out having drinks with her friends? Seems pretty normal, right? Well, here's the thing. My wife doesn't have friends. Okay, that's an exaggeration. She has friends, technically. Other moms she talks to at school functions, the occasional coworker she complains about over dinner. But not the kind of friends you get drinks with on a Wednesday night. Which is why I was sitting in the garage at 11:30, drinking a beer and staring at the mess of tools I kept telling myself I'd organize. There was no grand suspicion. No dramatic gut feeling. Just, something wasn't right. I should have gone inside. I should have brushed it off, told myself I was being ridiculous. But instead, I grabbed my phone and called my brother, Frank. Frank answered on the third ring. "This better be important," he said, his voice groggy. "I was dreaming about bacon." "Kimberly's at her book club," I said. There was a pause. "Okay. And then she's getting drinks." Another pause. "Then, you want me to be impressed that your wife has a social life?" "No. I want you to tell me when was the last time Kimberly read a book." Frank didn't answer right away, probably thinking back to the last time we had all been in the same room. He finally sighed. "Yeah, that doesn't sound right." "I know. Maybe she joined one of those book clubs where they don't actually read books," Frank suggested. "You know, like one of those wine nights where they pretend to discuss literature but mostly just gossip and complain about their husbands. Kimberly doesn't even pretend to like books." Frank made a humming sound, like he was waking up properly now. "So, what are you thinking?" I leaned back against the garage wall, watching a moth fling itself against the overhead light like it had a vendetta. "I don't know yet." "Well," Frank said, "if you want my advice." "I don't. Follow her." I groaned. "I'm not following my wife. What do I look like? Some jealous sitcom husband? What's next? Am I going to hide in a bush with binoculars?" "Donald." "What?" "She told you not to wait up." So when was the last time she ever gave you a heads up that she'd be late?" That shut me up. Because Frank was right, Kimberly was always late, but she never warned me. She just showed up hours past the time she said she would, acting like it was normal. The only reason she would tell me not to wait up is if she didn't want me to know when she was coming home. And just like that, I had a decision to make. I could ignore it. Let it go. Tell myself I was overthinking things, that there was a logical explanation. Or I could get in my car and see for myself. I lasted 3 more minutes in the garage before I grabbed my keys. I found her on accident. Seriously. It wasn't like I had some genius detective plan. I was just driving around, half thinking about going home when I saw Kimberly's car parked outside a bar I didn't even know she knew existed. And there she was, sitting inside with some guy. I didn't recognize him. He was younger than me, but not by much. Dark hair, wearing one of those too tight button-downs that guys wear when they want to look casual but also want to show off that they go to the gym. Kimberly was laughing. Not just laughing, leaning. You know what I mean. That kind of leaning that isn't really leaning, but it is, in fact, leaning. Where you could say, "Oh, she's just talking," but anyone with a brain would say, "No, dude, she's leaning." I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I was looking at. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was confused. Because here's the thing. If Kimberly was going to cheat on me, it should have been with someone impressive. I don't mean someone better looking, though that would have at least made sense, but someone unexpected. Someone dangerous. Someone worth ruining a marriage over. This guy? This guy looked like he still called his mom mommy. I needed to know more. So I did the only logical thing. I parked the car, walked inside, and sat down at the bar. 2 seats away from them. Close enough to hear. Kimberly was in the middle of telling some ridiculous story about how she once spilled an entire bottle of wine on herself and had to pretend it was part of the outfit. Which, first of all, was a lie. That happened to me. She just changed the details. Second of all, I knew that laugh. That laugh wasn't her normal laugh. That was the laugh she used when she wanted someone to like her. The bartender came over, asked what I wanted. I told him a whiskey. And then I waited. Kimberly still hadn't noticed me. The guy leaned in closer. "So," he said, lowering his voice, "when are you going to tell your husband?" I took a sip of my drink. Now this was getting interesting. I took another sip of my drink, not because I needed it, but because I needed a reason to sit still. The guy was still leaning in, waiting for an answer. Kimberly swirled whatever she was drinking and gave him a smile that I recognized immediately, the one that meant, "I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to act like I do." She used that look when she tried assembling furniture without reading the instructions, or when she convinced herself she could park in a parallel spot in one try. Except this wasn't a bookshelf. And it wasn't a parking spot. It was our marriage. "What's the rush?" Kimberly said, tilting her head in that fake thoughtful way. "We don't have to talk about all that now." Okay. That was an interesting choice of words. Not "I will never tell him," or "that's not what this is," but "we don't have to talk about all that now." And just like that, I had confirmation. The guy looked a little disappointed, but not surprised. That told me two things. One, this wasn't their first conversation about me. And two, he wasn't the one running the show here. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. On one hand, I appreciated that Kimberly was apparently the mastermind in this situation, and not some random guy in a tight shirt. On the other hand, what in the world was she thinking? "Come on, Kim." The guy nudged her knee under the table like a high schooler at prom. "I thought we were moving forward with this." Moving forward. Like this was some kind of project they were working on together. She sighed and put her glass down. "I just need a little more time." "More time for what?" "Great question, buddy. I'd like to know that too." Kimberly hesitated, and for a second, I thought maybe she was going to say something reasonable like "I'm still trying to figure things out," or "I don't want to hurt him." But instead, she did something worse. She shrugged. Like I was some minor inconvenience. Like telling my husband I've been seeing another guy was just one more thing on her to-do list, somewhere between buy more detergent and scheduled dentist appointment. That's when I realized I was done. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't in shock. I was just done. Because when you've been married to someone for 10 years, you know all their tells. You know when they're unsure, when they're scared, when they feel guilty. But Kimberly? She looked calm. Like this was no big deal. Like I was going to be fine. I finished my drink and set the glass down a little louder than necessary. Kimberly looked up, and then she saw me. Her face went through about 3 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. First, confusion, because she clearly hadn't registered yet that I was actually sitting there. Then, recognition, as the reality of the situation started settling in. And finally, a nice, slow-spreading panic. The guy followed her gaze and turned around, expecting to see something far less interesting than her actual husband. I gave them both a polite nod. "Evening." Kimberly's fingers curled around the edge of the table, and for a brief, glorious moment, I saw the gears in her brain grinding to figure out how to handle this. There were 2 paths she could take. Path 1. Act like this is all a big misunderstanding. Except that wouldn't work, because she was literally caught in the act. Path 2. Get defensive. She went with path 2. "What are you doing here?" "Really? That's what we're going with?" "What are you doing here?" I gestured vaguely around the room. "Oh, just thought I'd drop by this fine establishment for a casual night out." "You." Her eyes darted to the guy, who had suddenly become very interested in his coaster. "Donald, listen." I raised a hand. No, don't ruin it. I want to see what excuse you come up with." She didn't have one, because there wasn't one. Instead, she went for a different tactic. "Can we not do this here?" "Oh, now we care about where we do things?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Because you didn't seem to have an issue talking about it in public before." Kimberly's mouth opened, then closed. The guy looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath. "You know what? It's fine. I actually came here to tell you something, but you beat me to it." She frowned. "What?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I set it down on the table between us and slid it forward. Kimberly stared at it like it was a bomb. "What's that?" she asked, not reaching for it. "Divorce papers." The guy coughed. Kimberly blinked. "What?" I was going to wait until the weekend, maybe sit down and have a civilized conversation about it. But hey, since we're all being so open about our plans, might as well get it out of the way now. She just sat there, stunned. Like she genuinely hadn't considered that this would be the outcome. Like she thought I would just wait around. Like she thought she had time. I pushed my chair back and stood up. "Anyway, enjoy your book club." And with that, I walked out. No grand speech. No dramatic exit. Just done. And it felt good. I didn't go home right away. Not because I was having some kind of emotional crisis. I just knew Kimberly was going to follow me, and I didn't feel like dealing with her right away. Instead, I stopped by Frank's place. Frank opened the door wearing a bathrobe that wasn't tied properly, holding a glass of something that was definitely too strong to be drinking on a weekday. This better be good. I walked past him into the apartment. Kimberly's cheating on me. Frank stared at me for a second, then nodded. Want a drink? I want my brother to react like a normal person. He shrugged. Come on, man. We both knew she wasn't winning any awards for Wife of the Year. I sat down on his couch and ran a hand over my face. You could have at least pretended to be surprised. I was surprised, Frank said. 3 years ago, when I first realized she was definitely the type to cheat on you. No? Not so much. I looked at him. 3 years ago? Frank sighed. Donald, you're my brother. I love you. But you're also incredibly bad at noticing when people are awful. I frowned. She wasn't awful. Frank gave me a look. All right. Name 3 things she did in the last 5 years that made your life easier instead of harder. I opened my mouth. Then I closed it. Frank raised an eyebrow. I pointed at him. That's not the point. The point is, I caught her. Frank sat down across from me. So, what now? I leaned back. I gave her divorce papers. That actually got a reaction out of him. He whistled. Look at you. Making power moves. I was going to wait, I admitted. But then she was sitting in a bar, shrugging about whether she'd tell me she was cheating. So, seemed like a good time. Frank laughed. A shrug? Man, that's rough. I'd rather someone spit in my face. That would have been more respectful. Frank took a sip of his drink. How'd she take it? I smirked. Not well. He grinned. Beautiful. That's when there was a knock at the door. Frank and I both turned to look at it. Frank raised an eyebrow. Guessing that's not the pizza I ordered? No, I sighed. That would be Kimberly. Frank got up and went to the door. Want me to pretend you're not here? She knows I'm here. He groaned and opened the door. Oh, hey, Kimberly. Where is he? Frank gestured vaguely over his shoulder. You want to come in? Or should I just let you scream in the hallway like a crazy person? Kimberly stormed inside. She spotted me on the couch and crossed her arms. You seriously served me divorce papers at a bar? I looked at Frank. See? She's mad about where I did it. Not why. Frank nodded. Tells you everything you need to know. Kimberly shot him a glare. Frank, can you give us a minute? Nope. Frank sat down. This is my apartment. If you want a private conversation, take it outside. Kimberly turned back to me. Donald, what is wrong with you? I tilted my head. Well, I was happily married up until about 2 hours ago. Then I found out my wife's been running around with some guy who looks like he gets his hair cut at the mall. So, bit of a shift. Kimberly groaned and rubbed her temples. This is not how I wanted this to go. Oh, I'm so sorry, I said. Did I ruin your big moment? She dropped her hands. Can you just be serious for a second? I am serious, I said. You wanted out. Congratulations. Now you're out. That's not, she shook her head. Donald, I just needed time. Time for what? She hesitated. Frank leaned toward me. Ooh, this is about to be good. Kimberly glared at him, then turned back to me. I wasn't sure how to tell you. Oh, right. Because, hey, Donald, I'm cheating on you is such a difficult sentence to form. She sighed. Look, I know I messed up, but you don't have to make this so ugly. Kimberly, you cheated on me, I said. That is ugly. She exhaled. I was unhappy, Donald. Cool, I said. Now you're single. Frank fist bumped me. Kimberly's jaw clenched. You know what? Fine. If that's how you want to handle this, go ahead. Oh, I will. I stood up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to enjoy the rest of my evening without my ex-wife. She scoffed. Oh, so that's it. You're just done. I blinked. Did you think I was going to fight for you? Her silence told me everything. I laughed. Wow. You really thought you were going to have this whole dramatic love triangle moment, didn't you? She crossed her arms. I didn't. Yes, you did, I said. You thought I was going to beg for you. You thought I was going to be devastated, tell you how much I loved you, make some big, emotional plea for you to stay. Her face turned red. I smiled. Sorry to disappoint. Frank whistled. Dong, this is way better than my dream about bacon. Kimberly shook her head. You know what? Forget it. Do whatever you want, Donald. I spread my arms. Already am. She turned on her heel and stormed out. The moment the door slammed shut, Frank let out a low whistle. You know, I was hoping she'd put up more of a fight, but honestly, that was chef's kiss perfect. I exhaled and sat back down. Frank handed me his drink. So, what now? I took a sip. Now? I find a divorce lawyer. He grinned. You want one that specializes in revenge, or just someone who's really good at their job? I smirked. Why not both? The problem with catching your wife cheating isn't just the betrayal. It's the realization that you've been living in a completely different version of reality than the person you married. Like you were reading a book about a marriage, and she was skimming the back cover. So, yeah, I was getting a divorce. But before we got to that part, I had a personal matter to attend to. See, Kimberly thought she was getting away with a clean break. She thought she had time to rewrite history, to make this whole thing look like her decision. But I had some free time, a few connections, and a deep, satisfying need to make sure that didn't happen. Step one was finding out just how long I'd been playing the role of the oblivious husband. I already knew the guy. I'd seen his smug little face sitting across from my wife at a bar while she needed time. But I didn't know everything. And when you're about to divorce someone, knowing everything is a useful tool. I started with social media. I wasn't looking for selfies of them cuddling under sunsets. That would be too stupid, even for Kimberly. But people get careless. They forget how easy it is to piece things together when you know what to look for. Sure enough, it didn't take long. A tagged photo from 3 months ago, a group outing. Kimberly was in the background, standing just a little too close to him. The caption said something about work family, which was a nice touch, considering neither of them actually worked together. Another post, this one from 6 weeks ago. A mutual friend commented, "You two always seem to run into each other," followed by some laughing emojis. Kimberly had replied, haha, small world. Yeah, real small. I kept digging. The guy, his name was Evan, by the way, was just as reckless. He posted about concerts, day trips, casual little updates that seemed harmless. But if you looked at the dates, then looked at Kimberly's texts to me from those same days, suddenly, things lined up in a way that made her, "I'm just out running errands," messages sound real creative. It was beautiful, really. The arrogance of it all. People don't think they'll get caught, so they don't bother hiding. Now, I had what I needed. It was time for step 2. See, I wasn't interested in burning Kimberly's life to the ground. That would take too much effort, and honestly, I wanted her to sit in the mess she made. I wanted her to feel it. So, I did what any reasonable man would do. I threw a party. Not just any party. A celebration of our marriage. 10 years, after all. A big milestone. Deserved recognition. I sent out the invitations the next morning. Friends, family, her coworkers, a couple of mine. Even Kimberly's book club. Yes, the same fake book club she'd been using as an excuse. I made sure they all knew how much I appreciated the role they played in our lives. And, of course, Evan got an invite. To really sell it, I acted completely normal for the next few days. If Kimberly suspected anything, she didn't show it. She was probably relieved, assuming I was handling things maturely. She even kissed me on the cheek one morning. "I think this party will be really good for us." She had no idea. The night of the party, I made sure everything was perfect. Drinks stocked. Music playing. Smiling, laughing guests who thought they were attending an anniversary event. Kimberly walked in, wearing the kind of dress that screamed, "Look at me, I'm the main character." "Donald," she said, beaming. "This is amazing." "Oh, just wait," I said. About 20 minutes into the party, after everyone had their drinks and was properly settled, I tapped my glass. "All right, everyone," I said, smiling. "Thanks for coming. I just wanted to take a moment to really celebrate tonight." People clapped. Kimberly gave me an adoring look. "This marriage," I continued, "has been full of surprises. Some good, some very unexpected." Kimberly frowned slightly. "And I realized recently that I haven't been the best husband. See, I didn't know everything that was happening in my own relationship. But that changes tonight." Dead silence. Kimberly's smile was officially gone. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the TV. I made a little something for the occasion. Kimberly stepped forward. "Donald, maybe." I held up a hand. "Don't ruin the moment." The TV lit up. A slideshow. It started simple. A timeline of photos. Kimberly and Evan in the background of group shots. Kimberly commenting under his posts. A funny coincidence here, a casual meet-up there. Then, the timestamps. Side by side with texts she had sent me at the same time. People started shifting. Then, screenshots of their messages. Nothing explicit, just enough to make it very clear what was going on. Kimberly's face was frozen in horror. Evan? He was staring at his drink like he could sink into it and disappear. And me? I just enjoyed the show. The final slide appeared. A simple message, happy anniversary to us. Silence. Then Frank, who I knew would appreciate this, started clapping. Slow, deliberate. A couple of other people joined in, nervously. Kimberly turned to me, red-faced. Are you insane? I grinned. Just finally caught up, sweetheart. Evan set his glass down. I should probably... No, I said, gesturing for him to stay. You're part of this. People were whispering. Kimberly's friends looked very uncomfortable. Her coworkers were pretending not to be entertained. I gave her a nod. Anyway, I won't keep you. Just wanted to make sure you didn't have to keep pretending anymore. Kimberly opened her mouth, then closed it. And with that, I turned, grabbed myself another drink, and let my ex-wife deal with the mess she created. Kimberly showed up at my place the next morning like she was starring in a made-for-TV drama. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, followed by frantic knocking. I wasn't surprised. After last night's public execution of her dignity, I knew she'd come running. Not because she felt guilty, Kimberly didn't do guilt, but because she hated losing control. She wanted to be the one who dictated the story, the one who decided when things were over. She had lost that luxury. I opened the door to find her standing there, looking appropriately miserable. She wasn't wearing makeup, which I assumed was a strategic move to make her look more pitiful. Her eyes were red, and for a second, I thought, wow, maybe she actually cried. But then I remembered she could pop out fake tears like a malfunctioning sprinkler. Donald, she whispered, like we were in some tragic romance film. I stared at her. That's my name. Her lips trembled. Can I come in? No. Her jaw tightened. Please. I just need to talk to you. I leaned against the doorframe. Kimberly, you had plenty of time to talk to me before. But you saved all your best words for Evan. She flinched, and I knew I hit the right spot. I never meant to hurt you, she said, clutching her arms like she was holding herself together. I nodded. Right. You just meant for me to never find out. Her lip quivered. Classic Kimberly move. If she couldn't win with logic, she'd go for the emotional knockout. Donald, she said, voice soft, we've been together for 10 years. You know me better than anyone. You know I never wanted to be this person. I raised an eyebrow. You accidentally cheated for months? She shook her head. It wasn't like that. Oh, I definitely think it was. Tears pooled in her eyes. Again, not impressed. You're being so tough. I sighed and crossed my arms. Kimberly, let's speed this up. What exactly do you want? She exhaled shakily, like she was barely holding it together. I need you to understand that this wasn't about you. Right? I said. That's why I was the one being lied to. Her voice broke. I was confused. I nodded. Yeah, see, I'm not. Which is why I'm done. She let out a desperate laugh. Donald, you don't just throw away 10 years over a mistake. I tilted my head. No, you throw away 10 years by repeatedly making that mistake. She sniffed and wiped her face. I know you hate me right now. That would require caring. That got to her. She inhaled sharply. You don't mean that. I gave her a look. Kimberly, you weren't planning to tell me. If I hadn't caught you, how much longer were you going to keep it up? She shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. Exactly, I said. You would have dragged this out until you either got caught or got bored. Either way, I was never supposed to know. She swallowed. I didn't want to hurt you. I smiled. You know what's funny? You keep saying that. Like I'm supposed to believe you had my well-being in mind while you were sneaking around. A tear slipped down her cheek. I miss you. I clapped my hands together. Well, now you do. Her chin trembled. I was scared. I nodded. Yeah, see, I wasn't. And that's the difference. Her face twisted. So, that's it. You just get to humiliate me in front of everyone and move on. I smiled. Yeah. She blinked, thrown off by how easily I admitted it. You're not even willing to try? I laughed. Kimberly, let me explain something to you. You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or backing into a mailbox. You made a series of choices, over and over again. And now, you want me to feel bad because you don't like the consequences. Her nostrils flared. You didn't even love me, did you? Oh, I did, I said. But lucky for me, you cured that real fast. She wiped her face, her expression shifting. Less heartbreak, more anger. You're so. I held up a hand. Don't finish that sentence. Just go home, pack up your stuff, and figure out what happens next without me. Her breath hitched. You don't have to be so cold. I leaned in slightly. You don't have to be a liar. Yet here we are. She swallowed, like she wanted to say something else, but nothing would come out. For the first time, she finally looked like she understood. She wasn't getting sympathy. She wasn't getting some dramatic reconciliation. She wasn't getting anything. I was done. I took a step back. See you in court. And I shut the door in her face. A week after the door slam heard around the world, Kimberly officially moved out. She didn't make a big scene about it, probably because I told her in no uncertain terms that if she tried to pull any emotional theatrics, I'd personally call her mother and let her handle it. And if there was one person Kimberly feared more than losing control, it was her mother. So she packed up her things quietly, taking only what was hers. She left behind everything that had my name on it, probably assuming I'd be too much of a good guy to go after her for anything else. She was right. I wasn't interested in her money. I wasn't interested in making the divorce messier than it needed to be. I just wanted her gone. And she was. For about a month. Then, the emails started. They weren't dramatic. They weren't angry. They were strategic. Hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to check in. I saw something today that reminded me of you. Softball attempts at conversation. Testing the waters. Trying to see if I'd take the bait. I ignored them. Then, the messages got longer. I just want to say I'm sorry. I know I handled things badly. I miss talking to you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'd like to at least be friends. Friends. That one almost made me laugh. I responded to exactly one email. Kimberly, I'm not your friend. Best. Donald. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 weeks later, I got a text. Kimberly, can we meet up? Just to talk. I stared at my phone. I wasn't even mad. At this point, it was just impressive how she refused to accept reality. I gave her a very simple answer. Me. No. She didn't reply. I figured that was finally the last of it. And for a while, it was. I got the divorce finalized, kept the house, started settling into life as a newly single man. I went out with Frank Moore, spent time with people I'd neglected during the Kimberly era, and remembered what it was like to enjoy my own company. Then, one night, I ran into Evan. Well, more accurately, Evan ran into me. I was at the store, picking up some stuff, when I heard my name. Donald. I turned and saw him standing there, looking like a man who had made a series of bad choices and finally realized it. I gave him a nod. Evan. He shifted uncomfortably. Hey. How are things? I raised an eyebrow. Why do you care? He exhaled. Look, man, I know I don't deserve any kind of conversation with you, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I waited. He ran a hand through his hair. I was a fool. I shouldn't have. He stopped and shook his head. It was stupid. She told me things that. I don't know, man. She made it sound like your marriage was already over. I tilted my head. That's cute. You thought you were special. His jaw tightened. Yeah, well, turns out, I wasn't. I didn't say anything. He sighed. She's seeing someone else. I blinked. Then, I laughed. Of course she is. Evan didn't look amused. I mean, I knew it was a possibility, but... Evan, I said, you were the affair. What, did you think she was going to suddenly become loyal? He looked at the floor. Did you think you were different? He exhaled. Yeah. I smirked. Welcome to reality. He looked up. Did she ever try to talk to you? I nodded. Couple emails. A text. He frowned. She told me she hadn't spoken to you at all. I laughed again. Right. Because Kimberly's just full of honesty. Evan looked like he wanted to say more, but I was already done with the conversation. I gave him a pat on the shoulder. Chin up, buddy. You're free now. And with that, I walked away. I never heard from Kimberly again after that. I assumed she moved on to some other poor guy, someone else who was different, someone else who thought they could fix her, tame her, make her into something she never was. Not my problem. Life got better. I got better. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the best revenge isn't ruining someone else's life. It's watching them ruin it themselves. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel